வடுகனே நான் உன்னை நெடுகவும் கூம்பிட, வடுகனே நான் உன்னை நெடுகவும் கூம்பிட, கெடுகுகள் யாவையும் கடுகென மறைந்திடும். வடுகனே நான் உன்னை நெடுகவும் கூம்பிட, கெடுகுகள் யாவையும் கடுகென மறைந்திடும். வடுகனே நான் உன்னை நெடுகவும் கூம்பிட, கெடுகுகள் யாவையும் கடுகென மறைந்திடும். வடுகனே நான் உன்னை நெடுகவும் கூம்பிட. விரும்பிடும் என்னை நீ வருந்திட விடலாமோ, அருந்தமிழ்நாதனே தருங்கணம் இது வன்றோ, அருந்தமிழ்நாதனே தருங்கணம் இது வன்றோ. வடுகனே நான் உன்னை நெடுகவும் கூம்பிட, கெடுகுகள் யாவையும் கடுகென மறைந்திடும். வடுகனே நான் அன்பர்கள் இங்கே புண்பட்டு போவதை, அன்பர்கள் இங்கே புண்பட்டு போவதை கண் கொண்டு பார்க்காயோ, இன்பமயம் ஆக்காயோ, கண் கொண்டு பார்க்காயோ, இன்பமயம் ஆக்காயோ, கண் கொண்டு பார்க்காயோ, இன்பமயம் ஆக்காயோ. வடுகனே நான் உன்னை நெடுகவும் கூம்பிட, கெடுகுகள் யாவையும் கடுகென மறைந்திடும். வடுகனே நான் உன்னை நெடுகவும் கூம்பிட.
Srimatre Namaha. Namaskaram everyone, and welcome back to our Sacred Rites and Rituals of Sanātana Dharma Learning Series, which is a joint presentation by the Sri Vidya Temple Society of Rochester, New York, USA, and Ashtanga Yoga Mandir of Sri Lanka. These lectures are conducted by Sri Chaitanyanandanada, affectionately known as Ayya. Ayya is the founder and Peethadipati of the Sri Vidya Temple. For more than 40 years, Ayya and Amma, Srimati Jnanamba, have opened their hearts, their home, and the temple to all the devotees who wish to share the worship of the Divine Mother and take up the sacred path of Devi Upasana. Both Ayya and Amma have dedicated their lives to the noble mission of preserving and spreading the knowledge of Devi worship and the rich tradition of Saiva Bhakti. Through this learning series, Ayya continues to share his wealth of knowledge as he continues his dream of making learning accessible to all individuals. The temple has created and released a new mobile app for both Apple and Android platforms. We encourage everyone to download from the App Store and Google Play Store. Users can access live stream content, video, and the app also has the ability to do online sponsorships for pujas from the app itself. A few housekeeping reminders before we begin today's session. Please use the question form to share any questions you might have pertaining to the content discussed. For those viewing our live stream, our question form can also be found on our webpage, which is srividya.org/aym-lectures. At this time, we will hand it over to Aya. To begin our session, in our previous session, we had spoken about the Navaratri Kalashams and Yagna Mandapam, as well as the Dasamahavidyas. And from that, we did have one question that was outstanding. And Aya, we were wondering if we could ask you this one question.
Sure.
We were wondering what drew you to Tripurasundari?
Om Hamsas Sivasoham Hamsaha Hasakafrem Hasakshamanavarayum Hasaum Sahakshamavarayim Saho Swarupanirupanahetave Swagurave Sri Annapurnambika Sameda Sri Sri Amrutanandanada Saraswati Mahapattaraga Mama Sri Guru Sri Padukam Pujayami Tarpajami Namaha. I prostrate before my Sri Guru, the esteemed Srila Sri Amrutanandanada Saraswati of Devipuram, India, and worship him and implore him to sit on my open heart lotus and speak through me. The question that was left over from last time was what drew you to Tripurasundari? Tripurasundari, the worship of her, usually either in the form of an icon or in the form of a bimbam, a picture, or in the form of a yantra, has been carried out from time immemorial, both in Tamil Nadu and other places where Tamils lived. I am sure the same is true of all the other parts of the great country of India. In my family, in my father's side, around 1,000 years back approximately, they belonged to a clan that was close to what is today known as Palghat. And I was told that there was a little hamlet by the name of Kalgudi, where my father's ancestors traced their ancestry to. And unfortunately, by the time I reached the age of 14, 15, where I could ask intelligent questions of the elders that were left in the family, all but one had died, including my father. About a few years before he died, 1953-54, I believe, he had just retired from the Sri Lanka Railways. Then it was called Ceylon CGR, Ceylon Government Railway. And he was at home, and he was a prolific storyteller. You could ask him and he would tell us stories in such a way that it would stick in our minds. And there were 8 of us in the family. So sometimes he would sit down and the kids would be seated around him and he would tell these stories. One day he related the story of his sister, younger sister, who was known as Visalakshi. She was all but 16 years old. And during a particular Navaratri, which happened to be quite a big function for that family, they would have cooks working in the back of the house under an erected shed, and whoever who came to the house or people from the village were fed, and they were given dhotis and saris and things like that. So I surmise that my grandfather must have been more than average, must have been quite well-to-do. As was the custom in those days, my aunt, that is my father's younger sister, had gone and had a bath. And as was the custom those days, she went for the worship in her wet clothes. As fate would have it, she caught a chill. And before the Navaratri came to an end, she had developed a serious case of pneumonia and passed away, despite whatever medical attention that they could give her at that time. Now, she was my grandfather's only daughter after 2 sons. This must have been a severe blow to him. And 5 generations before him, people had been worshipping the Sri Chakra. My father had a maternal uncle who was the only surviving elderly relative that I could find out the history from. I went to speak to him. He was my father's maternal uncle and quite well read, quite deeply into yoga and other occult arts. He said, to the best of his knowledge, at least for 5 generations, they had worshipped the Sri Yantra. The yantra was at home and it was passed down from generation to generation. He said before that, from what his ancestors told him, they would decorate a lamp. A lamp would be decorated as the Devi, properly dressed with a sari and other things, and they would worship that lamp. No indication or no information has been given to me as far as how the yantra came into the possession of the family. I have no idea. And those facts are gone. And they had worshipped the Sri Yantra. And when the death occurred in this family during Navaratri, my grandfather, in his anguish at losing his only daughter, had made a declaration that since the Devi had removed the light that was burning in his house, he would not light another lamp for her and abandon the worship. When my father related this story to us in 1954, after his retirement, I was 10 years old, 10 plus, and I was thinking, why would anybody stop worship that was in the house just because somebody died? And I think the information went deep into my psyche. And I remember for several days after hearing this, I would ask my mom, why would they stop? Did you mean that they closed up the shrine room and took everything out from there and there was no shrine room in the house, just like a little 10-year-old's curiosity. And my mother said, no, they just stopped worshiping. At least grandfather stopped worshiping. And now when the head of the family stops this, the others would follow suit. So this happened in 1918 and the worship was abandoned at that time. But as a 10-year-old, when I heard this story, I decided that when I was older, I would try to revive it. And I had to wait almost 20 years, 22 years before that wish would be fulfilled. Apparently, the Devi put this thought into my mind so that she could remain in the family. The legends, as far as the Devi worship in families is concerned, what it says is that she will remain in a family for 8 generations. So long as they worship her and honor her and love her with affection, she would remain in that family. In Tamil, there's a statement that goes, Kulandayum Deivamum Kondadum Rathile. Kulanda is children, little children, and deities, Deivam, where they are treated with affection, they will stay. So apparently, my father and his older brother, who were both employees of the Ceylon Government Railway, they did not bother to follow up on the worship, even after the death of their father and parents. It was a brand new piece of news to me when he talked about this, because he had never spoken about it before. And then I think the Devi set off a series of motions slowly that culminated in my meeting with the Reverend Mataji, who initiated me into Subramanya worship. And that's also interesting because the town I was born has but one Hindu temple. Sanātana Dharmic temple, there was one. It's called the Kandaswami temple in the town of Bandaravilla, nestled in the hills of Sri Lanka. And I was born but 50, 60 yards away from that temple. So it so happened that Mataji gave me the mantra of Subramanya. And for the next 15 years, I faithfully chanted whatever mantra diksha that she had given to me and performed Ashtottara Sadanamavali Archana to Subramanya daily, morning and evening. And later on, Guruji told me that it is actually that practice that led me to Sri Vidya. And before that, having heard this story, every time I would go to a temple, I would very carefully watch the priests perform. And when I saw them perform mudras, I had started reading by this time. So I knew a little bit about how they worship the mother, and that mudras were a big part of that worship. I would quietly wait till everybody left and ask the priests who did the mudras whether they knew Sri Vidya. And on rare occasions when they said yes, I would ask them, can you teach me? And they would cite the birth that I had taken into a Kshatriya family and say, this is not for you. And some of them would be really angry that I had the temerity to ask them such a question. But anyway, this is the one that ultimately, when we started 1976, Zambia, in the city of Lusaka, its capital, when we celebrated Shivaratri, after having asked Mataji for the mantra for Sri Vidya, she had, after initiation in 1964-65, somewhere before 66-70, she had a function, a celebration in her ashramam for Sadarudram. Sada meaning 100. Rudram, chanting of the Rudram 100 times and offering it in the fire. Sadarudra Homam. I had never heard of any such thing before. But I was present. And there were 108 Ritviks who performed Homam into 108 Homakundams. It was an interesting ritual. For the first time, I saw how the Homams were being done. At the conclusion of the Sadarudram, they chanted something, not a word of which I had heard before or understood. But for some reason, I had what they call Romanjanam. My hair stood on end. I had goose pimples all over my body. And I continued to have it for a long time when they were chanting this. So at the conclusion of the ritual, and after everybody had left, I asked Mataji, what is it that they chanted? And she said, this is Lalita Sahasranam. I was so enamored by the thing. I asked her, Amma, will you teach me this? Then she said, you are only 20 years old. You are in university now. Go finish your education. Get a job. Get married. Have a few children. Then you come to me and I'll teach you. You're too young for this now. Now the thought that ran through my mind was, this lady is already 68, 69, 70 years old. By the time I finish all this, she would have gone. And she looked at me, smiled and said, I know what you're thinking, you rascal. She said, it doesn't matter whether I am the one who teaches you. Now that seed has been planted inside of you, when you are ready, somebody will appear in front of you, whether you are in a deserted island or whether you are in the middle of a desert, does not matter. And you will learn it. And that was the end of the story there. So this happened after 10 more years, 1976. In Lusaka, one day after puja, after Subramaniam puja, which we were doing, I mentioned this. And there was an elderly gentleman, very quiet, but you could tell, very affectionate, very kind, I was much younger than him at that time. He said, Haran, my grandfather has taught me Sahasranam. I will teach it to you. So we decided that we would chant it during Mahashivaratri celebrations as an offering to Shiva throughout the night. And it was chanted, I remember, 5 times, if I remember correctly. And the first 2 or 3 times, it was like I was trying to chant it with marbles in my mouth. I couldn't inflect any of the wordings properly. But Sri Balasubramaniam, that was his name. Please remember, that is also Murugan. Balasubramaniam. This gentleman told me very kindly, don't give up hope, it doesn't matter. You keep trying, it will come. So keep trying, I did. Day and night, listening to this, trying to read along with it. Within a week, I had committed it to memory. That is how the Tripurasundari came into my life. And then, 3 years later, Guruji walked into my life. I actually again met him in Sri Balasubramaniam's house, where we used to go every Tuesday for Parayanam of Lalita Sahasranama. He came there. And I took one look at his eyes and I was lost. They were like these deep pools where you could lose yourself. I took one look at him and immediately realized here is a human being who has experienced something that you and I cannot even imagine to get. So I waited patiently, watched him perform Dasamudras during the Parayanam of the Sahasranama. Waited until everybody left. And gently asked him, he said, yes. I asked him, do you know Sri Vidya? Yeah, he said, yes, I know. I have a guru. And I have been doing puja very kindly. I did not ask him whether he would give me Diksha right there. After he left, the following days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Wednesday, I went back to Balu uncle's house and told him, this is what has been told to me before, that the mother has been worshipped in my family. Do you think I can ask him for Diksha? And Balu uncle said, why not? And Thursdays, we always had bhajans for Sri Sai Baba, Satya Sai Baba, Bhagavan. And that day of all days, my car was in the workshop because the clutch cable had snapped. So I had no transportation to go to the bhajan. So I asked Balu uncle whether he would give me a lift. And when he was giving me a ride, I said, after the bhajan, can we go and see Prahalada Shastri Garden, which is Guruji's given name? He said, okay. So, with the one who brought me to the Devi, I went to see Guruji. And when I went and knocked on the door, his oldest daughter, Anna Lakshmi, she came and opened the door. She has not seen me. She doesn't know who I am. She said, Daddy, somebody is here to see you. And he came out of the shrine room in his house. And he looked at both of us and he said, come, come. I have just finished Navavarana Puja. Took us inside the shrine room. And Visarja Argyam was there. He gave us Visarja Argyam, both of us. So, before I asked for the Diksha, I had the Amritam. Then Balu uncle discreetly withdrew from the shrine room to the living room, leaving the two of us alone. And Guruji asked, what can I do for you? As though he didn't know. I told him, Ayya, you told me that you have Sri Vidya Diksha and that you do pujas. will you take me on as a disciple and teach me? I want to learn. And this tradition has been in my family. Without the slightest hesitation, he said, of course, why not? First, he said, you don't need it, Karan, because you are chanting Sahasranamam, you can continue. I said, no, yeah, it has to be formalized. And he said, okay, fine. That is how I came to the Tripurasundari. I hope this answer satisfies the people who asked it. So let's get on with it. In a temple,
Namaskaram, everyone. Sorry, we're just having to adjust Aya's mic right now. If you can give us a few minutes, we're just going to take a 10-second pause to adjust Aya's mic, and then we'll continue. Thank you.
we have talked about the Yajnashala, the structure of our temple, the philosophy behind building a temple in this fashion instead of following the agamic pattern. Now, we are going to look at some of the things. Maybe during the explanations, the listening audience will also get to know the philosophy behind how we run our temple and why we do so in this fashion. When you go to a temple in a traditional way, the Gopuram that you see is called the Stula Lingam. So that means, obviously, it will be a tall structure, and from any part of the village, in cities like Madurai, from any part of the city, if you turn towards the Meenakshi Sundareshwara temple, you would see the tall Gopurams. So that means, even those people who cannot go to the temple, because in the early days there were restrictions. It is because of people like Ambedkar, Mahatma Gandhi, and other reformers that slowly some of the rules were relaxed. So even those people who could not go to the temple would look at the Gopuram and fold their hands. That is called, the Gopuram is called a Stula Lingam, representing the Shiva that's in the sanctum. And if you were able to go into the temple, you will walk inside after ablutions, of course. And the first thing that you are supposed to see is the Dvajastambam. When you look at the Dvajastambam, that is a representation of the Mula Murti. You will worship the Dvajastambam. And if it is a Shiva temple, if it is in India, you would face north in front of the Dvajam and worship the Swami, do Namaskaram. And the rule is that you're supposed to do at least 3 Namaskarams there before you proceed and get the permission of Nandi before you look into the Garbhagriha. Now in a temple, there will be rituals going on. Whether you go to the temple or whether you don't go to the temple, if it is built according to agamic principles, if it's Gopuram, then definitely some portion of the agamic side has been satisfied there. It will be built according to them, and you have rituals going on in the temple. You're supposed to 6 times a day. Muppodum Tirumeni Tinduva. 3 times a day.
Sorry, we're having a difficult time hearing you. We're just going to get the AV team to reset your mic for a sec.
Hello, can you hear me now?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay. So the Shivacharyas will be worshipping the Shivalingam. And what is the worship? Patram, Palam, Pushpam, Toyam. Patram. You use leaves. What leaves would you use for Shiva? Bilva. Or Shiva Tulasi. Or Patram, Palam, Pushpam, Toyam. Pushpam, flowers. Things like Nandiyavattai, jasmine, lotus, you can offer Swami. Patram, leaves, Pushpam, flowers. Palam, offer whatever fruits that particular season has given you. Now, in a tropical country like India, especially in the south, with its sweltering temperatures above 80 degrees all the time, there is no climatic demarcations. The seasons are not very well defined. Of course they are, but it will be very mild. So throughout the year, you will be able to get most of the things, the tropical fruits and other things that you can get. But the actual statement is Ridu Palam, Ridu Patram, Ridu Pushpam. Ridu is season. Whatever the season throws up or produces, you will use for puja. Palam is water. Patram, Palam, Pushpam, Doyam. These things you have to offer and worship the Murti. You're supposed to do it 6 times a day. And in between, Palam means water. That means you do Abhishekam. And after Abhishekam, what you have to do? You have to give Vastram. And then the category of Alankaram, decoration to the Murti, falls in there. You have to anoint the Murti with Chandanam, Kunkumam, Vibhuti, those things. Vastram, give it clothing. Avaranam, jewelry, ornamentation, all of those things are done. So 6 times a day, you're supposed to do the puja. Are there any temples that do puja 6 times a day? Yes, there are. Temples like Tiruvannamalai, Chidambaram, Gangai Konda Cholapuram. The last time I looked, they used to do this 6 times a day, puja is done. And then there are local traditions that are strictly adhered to, depending on where the temple is. Example, Chidambaram. You may be the highest priest in one of the highest temples in the country. But if you go to Chidambaram, you cannot do the puja. The puja can only be done by Dikshitas, who have been traditional owners of the temple for 5,000 years. You can easily identify them because they have a bun on the side of the head. And the Dikshitas, they have their own tradition. There used to be 3,000 families, now there are 317 families, I understand. They draw lots once a year. For 365 days, they draw lots. And if you get it, your father, your brother, your uncle's son, your brother's son, everybody will come that day and perform and help to perform the puja. Whatever income that comes that day is for the family. That is how it is structured. So, like for the local traditions, where the temple is located, you have to do. Now, if you Kasi, Again, you may be the topmost priest somewhere. You can't do the puja. The puja is done by what are called Ganga Putras, the people who are sons of Ganga. They are a special group of Brahmins. And they will be masters of all the 4 Vedas. They will be invariably Chaturvedis. Sometimes there are Trivedis also. 3 Vedas they know. So like that, in a Shiva temple, 6 times a day, you're supposed to do the puja. In this part of the world, when we have relocated our families to places in the Western world, in an entirely alien culture, with seasons defined perfectly. Summer, autumn, winter, spring. The agamas are very clear. Ridu pushpam, whatever that you can get during winter, you offer to Swami. Ridu palam, whatever fruits that you can get during that time, offer. Ridu patram, whatever, can you get bilvam in the United States? Of course you can. If you go down south, in Florida, you can buy them. You can get it. But from where the Rochester Sri Rajarajeswari Temple is located, Florida is thousands of miles away. Anyway, that is an entirely different story. But whatever you can get, you can offer. Now, we are going to look at toyam, water. Before I get into the semantics of this, water has been and will always be treated as a very precious commodity by the Vedas and by the Agamas. Our great Paramacharya, the great sage in Kanchipuram, he had a younger brother. He was called Shivansar. Mahaperiyava, the sage at Kanchipuram, used to tell everyone that he was born a sage, that he did not have to undergo any practice, any severe penances to reach that stage. So Shivansar also had a great following of people. They would go to him. And he was a householder, so he would go to anybody's house. Mahaperiyava could not do that. As the head of a mutt, he had certain restrictions. This Shivansar in the 1920s told his devotees, in 75 years' time, you will see, people will be buying water in bottles. The one on the right-hand side is Shivansar. And look what happened. In the 1920s, there were no water shortage, nothing. But he was a Tirkadarshi. He knew what was going to happen. So water is to be treated with reverence. At the present day and age, I read that the aquifer in most of Tamil Nadu is polluted or has been completely drained. So there is acute water shortage. Can you imagine in another 200 years what the situation will be like? Water will be more precious than gold. So we have to treat nature's resources properly, in spite of the fact that certain governments and heads of government do not care about the climate. We have to be conscious of it. And we have to transmit this information to the next and the next generations that come up. Teach them how to respect water. So this water in a Shivalayam, in a Shiva temple, is what they use for Abhishekam. When they do the Abhishekam, the water is the first item. There are very many systems where the Abhishekam can be performed with many varieties of dravyams. Dravyam is ingredients. So this Abhishekam is what is referred to as Patram, Palam, Pushpam, Thoyam. That Thoyam is the Abhishekam, the water that is used. In addition, it is the water that is used in our tradition, a copper Achamana Patram. It is the same water after the Achamana Patram has been used for Buddha Suddhi, purification of the physical body, where you go Atma Tattvaya Swaha, Shiva Tattvaya Swaha, Vidya Tattvaya Swaha, Sarva Tattvepya Swaha, or Kesavaya Swaha, Narayana Swaha, Madhavaya Swaha, Govindaya Namaha. Many, many traditions are there. You can say, Aim Atma Tattvaya Swaha, Klim Vidya Tattvaya Swaha, Sau Shiva Tattvaya, all of them, water is used. And it is used in a copper vessel. We have gone through this before. There is a chemical process related to that. And depending on what metal you are using, either if it is one of the noble metals, copper, silver or gold, they are called noble metals because they are antibacterial. Now, this water is the one that they use for Abhishekam. I used to be very curious about why Abhishekam. In a temple you go, you will be finding out that either of three rituals are being carried out. One is homam, worship into the fire, invoking the deity in the fire and worshipping it. There are many instances where photographs have been taken of the fire and you can see the deity in the fire. That's a given fact. It's a common occurrence in South India. I'm sure it is the same in the north or east or west. But you see the deity in the fire. So fire worship is. Now if you notice, if you worship the deity in the fire, total combustion is taking place. And whatever ingredients, whatever dravyams you are offering, break it down into the chemical composition of what that particular dravyam contains. Complete combustion means oxidation is total. It is burning. And when it is burning, combining with the oxygen, gases are produced. And when they emanate, the closer you are to the fire, you will be breathing it. And what else happens? It enters the atmosphere. The atmosphere now has oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, water vapor, argon, krypton, xenon, neon, so many of the rare gases and all that. In between the molecules of these gases and other products like water vapor, H2O, 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. So it will be floating around. Imagine that. The space between these molecules is called the ether. And the gases that you are producing by using the homam, along with the mantrotarnam, let us say, Triyambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtivardhanam Urvarugamiva bandhanan mridyor mukshe yamamrudad swaha. And so on. With whatever dravyam you are using. And a combination of so many gases, because the homa dravyam that we use in the temple, we make it ourselves. It has 108 ingredients. And that is used in the fire. So you can imagine the gases that are released, when they enter the ether, they spread at least to quite a few kilometers from the temple. You will find the 24-hour homam that was recently done in the temple. Can you imagine how far it would have spread? So that is the one that creates or gives you most benefit. Homam, havanam, yajnam. A homam is a localized minor worship. It's not in any way inferior to what you're doing otherwise, like a Adhirudra Yajnam. But a homam is a small scale worship. In there, Buddha Bali, Devada Bali, Dig Devada Bali, and all that is limited. But if it is a Yajnam, like Adhirudram, it takes 11 days to do. Or Mahapratyangira Homam, Mahapratyangira, or Sarveshwara Homam, or something like that. Then you have to make special offerings for the retinue of devatas that come. If you are doing Sri Chakra Homam, Sri Vidya Homam, Maha Sadhushashti Koti Yogini Ganasevita, 64 crore deities, male and female, would come. You have to give them. If it is Shiva, he has to be given what is called Havir Baham. That Havir you have to give. Don't get intimidated by big words like Havir Baham. Havis is plain rice with ghee. See, he doesn't ask you to give him gold and silver and diamonds and all that. Whatever that you eat, you give him. Of course, before you eat it. For the sake of the children who are watching, if you eat the rice or take a little portion of that rice and eat it, it is called uchchastam. You can't offer that into the fire. So freshly made with ghee, it is mixed and you offer. So this is considered to be the most beneficial of the rituals, because it will spread for kilometers around. I will tell you a story because it's already time. I spent quite a bit of time on the first question. A few years ago, somebody gave me 2 volumes. Each volume is about that thick. The title of those 2 volumes is Agni. It's in our temple library. And I was going through the thing, just browsing through the thing to see what were there. There's a type of havan or a type of yajnam that they do in Kerala, building an image out of bricks like a bird flying. And it is supposed to be a very specialized, very elaborate ritual, peculiar to that region of India. And in Kerala, you know, there are a class of priests called Nambiyars, Nambudris, who are extraordinarily fussy about maintaining purity. When he is giving you prasadam, if you actually touch him, he will go and bathe. Because you are not supposed to touch any of those people. They are very careful, that's what I'm trying to say. And I think the temple authorities, or maybe the Indian Institute of Sciences based in Bangalore, somehow they made a request to come and observe and conduct measurements using various electrical instruments. So they were given permission. And I am told the ritual lasted either 9 days or 7 days or some such thing, I forget now. The scientists descended there with their instruments, they set everything up, and the Havan started, and they measured the conductivity and electromagnetic activity around the temple. At the end of the first day, they found that the electromagnetic activity had increased 10 meters from the temple. Second day, third day, they measured the thing going further and further and further away from the temple. On the last day, it was 6 kilometers away from the temple. So you know. Now, whatever archana that you do, whatever other rituals you do in a temple, it won't reach that much. But if you worship a Sri Yantra properly, the size of the Sri Yantra, either the side multiplied by 108,000 times, depending on how intensely that Sri Chakram is being worshipped. The influence will be felt in spherical symmetry. That means, like the Sri Yantra Meru, Sri Chakra is in the middle, and there is a sphere enveloping the thing. And that envelope is down in the earth too, because it is a sphere now. That is how powerful these rituals are. I will answer 2 questions from today, and then we will stop today.
The Abhisheka Jalam, should it flow from your fingers or should it be poured directly onto the murti?
What is the correct way to pour jalam? It should not touch your fingers. Just like in the Panchapatram, when you take a Panchapatram, especially your nails, the ends of your nails should not touch the water, because the ends of the nails is a repository for germs. And what things you have done before that, God knows. Your hand should not touch that water. Similarly, when you pour water from a vessel onto the murti, a Sri Chakram, a Sri Chakra Mahameru, a Shivalingam, an icon of Murugan or Shiva or Devi or Vishnu, it should not touch your fingers. It should go directly onto the murti.
Then here may be a related question. What is the difference between Abhishekam and Tarpanam?
Tarpanam is individual. You are chanting it with one particular mantra that you are doing the Tarpanam for that particular deity. For instance, if you take Ganapati Tarpanam, it is Om Srim Hrim Klim Glaum Gam Ganapate Varavarda Sarvedanam Me Vashamane Swaha Tarpayami. Then you will go Om Srim, like that 4 times, 4 times, 4 times, 4 times. So that mostly it is confined to that deity and to the mantra that has been that you have been initiated into. In an Abhishekam, you chant what are called suktams, portions from the Veda. Purusha Suktam, Rudram, Namakam Chamakam, right? Sri Suktam, Ratri Suktam, Nila Suktam, there are so many of them. So Nakshatra Suktam, Navagraha Suktam, those things. So the difference is between how you observe the thing, and when you offer the water on the murti itself, when you are doing, Tarpanam is usually done to, say if you are doing Ganapati, it's a turmeric image that gets washed away. If you have a granite murti, that won't get washed away. It will. After 2,000, 3,000 years of constantly pouring water on it, it will go a little bit, but it won't dissolve. And there is a phenomenon called surface tension. What is surface tension? When a drop of water is falling through space, it has the characteristic of limiting itself by something like a membrane, so that the shape remains the same. This surface tension of the liquid that you are pouring on, or whatever that you are pouring on for Abhishekam, will form a type of barrier, or I shouldn't say barrier, a bridge between the vibrations coming from the yantra sthapanam of the murti and entering the atmosphere. And you will notice that in the Garbhagraham, when you are doing Abhishekam, moisture content is great. And the electromagnetic transmission that comes from there, reaching the deities, reaching the devotees, is much potent, very much potent. That's the difference. Enough.
We'll stop here today.
We'll see you again next week.
Thank you, Aya, for taking the time to share your beautiful story about what drew you closer to Tripurasundari and sharing your wealth and knowledge regarding the effects of Homam Havan. We are eager to hear more about these sacred teachings in the upcoming sessions. To access all our content from prior sessions, please visit srividya.org/aym-lectures. Thank you for everyone for joining us today. At this time, we will hand it over to Vyasana from Ashtanga Yoga Mandir to begin our yoga session.
Greetings to all of you and pranams to Haranaya and all the devotees and members of the Sri Vidya Temple and Ashtanga Yoga Mandir. Today, we will be looking into one of the very primarily important technique, those who are going into meditation and who is willing to make the pranayama as an effective tool. It is told in certain ancient textbook, like Siddha Siddhanta Pattati, that when a person is in the process of doing the yoga practices, mantras, dhyana, or puja, these components are part of it. The efficacy to be increased, either in the mantras efficacy or in the pujas efficacies, it is very important that the mind should be in the neutral stage. If the mind has to be in the neutral stage, prana has to be in the neutral stage. If the prana has to be in the neutral stage, it is important that there are certain pranayama techniques which has to be done. In that, today we will be doing one of the pranayama techniques, which is considered to be the basic technique, which will be supporting to all the other pranayama practices. So you can sit in any comfortable positions of your choice. Padmasana is great, Siddhasana or Vajrasana, anything of your choice is wonderful. And then this practice comes as a pre-practice for the Bastrika. There is a technique which is called as Bastrika, and this technique becomes as a primary technique. It's a very simple technique which can be practiced by everyone of any age, any time. And in this technique, there are no concerns regarding, like, who should do, who should not do, all those aspects. So Bastrika technique, all of you know how to do it. That is the inhalation and exhalation. What has to be observed, that the inhalation ratio and the exhalation ratio has to be equal. You cannot do like. So if you see the velocity, there is a difference in the velocity. That is, either the inhalation speed is more or the exhalation is lesser, or inhalation is less and exhalation is more. You can't do like that. So if you are learning the Bastrika, in the Bastrika technique, what is important? Primarily, the velocity of the speed has to be equal. So how do you learn that? That is where we learn this specific technique, what we are going to do, which is called as the Bastrika Bhuja Kriya. Okay. Bhujam is basically we use usage of the hand and then do. So how do you do it? So so basically you'll bring your hands like this, the body is straight. You will inhale up, and then when you inhale up, just ensure for sometimes the palms goes like that. It should not go like that. Understand? So when you're like this, it goes up straight. And then it comes down, you should not touch. That is what is important. So you inhale and you exhale. You inhale, exhale. You inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Okay? So we will do that practice. So all of you slowly come into a very comfortable position. And then slowly up. Bring your hands up, ensure that you don't touch and the surface in the middle of the head region. You will take a deep breath in. Relax. When you do this, just observe your shoulders, whether you have any pain. In this practice, what is important is that where does the focus go? The focus should be on your palm. The palm speed, the breath will get regulated. So when you know up to here is inhalation, up to here exhalation. So when it goes up, you inhale. When it comes down, you exhale. So according to this speed, your breath has to regulate. Once you start regulating that for a continuously of one mandala, which is of 48 days, then automatically when you do the Bastrika breathing, it becomes easier. Okay. So this practice you can easily do about 27 times you can do. And in case if you are not able to do for 27 times, that means there is a concern in your neck region if you have any pain. Because if you see the movement is very limited, if you can see. So it is not something which you are stretching yourself out of your body's capacity. So if I'm able to do like this, which you will know that in the yogic Sukshma Vyayama, we have this technique. Same way you have it like this. That is from the elbow understanding. So if the elbow is not in the great concern, then it will have a reflectory aspect in your neck and the shoulders. So this becomes as an assessment in yogic health assessment, right? So we will just do 27 counts today. Slowly up, inhale, exhale, breathe in, breathe out, 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 breathe in, breathe out. slowly relax yourself. Observe your breath, observe your neck. Slowly do a palming. Slowly tap your shoulders. So there are a few variations in this practice, which we will discuss in the following sessions. So thank you very much to all of you, and we will end the sessions with the Shanti Mantra. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.